What's up, guys? J.R. Raymond with BowlerX.com here with an exclusive interview with last week's champion, Ryan Ciminelli. We're going to talk about last week as well as this week coming up, heading into Coldwater, what we saw at practice today, what Ryan saw, the balls he's going to use, the balls he used last week, and a bunch of other stuff. So stick around and we'll get to it here in a second. Stay tuned. So, guys, welcome back. I'm back with Ryan Ciminelli, last week's champion. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have conversation here. We're going to figure out what exactly he had going on last week, what was going through his mind over the last few years when he was in his little bit of a drought, you would call it, and then what he's going to do this week. So, Ryan, congratulations on last week's win. That was pretty impressive, especially since you were the only lefty. What was it, the top 30?
I think it might have been 30.
Yeah, the high lefty, you end up winning, the only lefty in the top 30.
You know, it's interesting. In practice session, I told my wife after the practice session, I said, you know, the picture I'm seeing, the shapes that I'm looking for remind me a lot of the 2015 Open. And that's kind of my trick, being able to trap the lane like that and use the fronts. I don't know that there's another lefty that can really do that the way I do. So there was some lefties that got checks. I think even 7 of us got checks. So, I mean, they were hard on both sides, and the grind made it to where if you bowled well, you can get a check. And once I got to the checking, the catcher's round and just kind of was freewheeling more or less, I decided, you know what, we're going to go all out. We're going to go for it. And I got none to lose. And we just matched up perfectly. I don't know, perfect storm kind of thing. And we came out of the gate, I think I bowled 745 the first 3.
Wow.
So we made a huge jump. And then I hit arguably the worst pair in Delaware. Bowl 165, couldn't do anything right.
Wait, which pair was that?
17 and 18.
See, I'd argue. I'd say 1920. I bowled 130 on 1920.
So I had 4 shots at it and finally bowled 206 on that pair eventually. But yeah, that pair was real bad for me. So I put myself back in a hole with 1 to go, trying to make the top 12, and told my wife, I said, I need at least 220 here to even have a sniff. And don't you know, I bowled 220. So in my gut, I thought I needed the first 1 to 10th. I packed up. I was happy with the week. Walked over to Capriati's to get some lunch, and I was going to get on the road. And I'm sitting there eating, and it was actually, I think, just a couple fans walked in between, and they looked at me and they go, "It's by the skin of your teeth, huh?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, you're in. I'm like, "No, I'm not." Like, "You're not?" I'm like, I looked at, I guess I am.
Free money.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, 5 guys. I shouldn't have been in the top 12. It was just kind of the perfect storm thing. Sean, I think, opened the 9th and 10th for 170. O'Neill, I know, opened the 9th and 10th for 150. Larson bowled 150. Troop needed a double in the last 3 or 4 frames at any point, and he goes around me. And OG bowled 170. All to fall less than a mark behind me. And so it was just a perfect storm, and I snuck in. And then once I snuck in and had the side to myself, 12 games, and you hit the pairs more than once, and so I could develop them and then come back to them and have them just kind of ready for me. And I like the fresh, and I enjoy following myself. I feel like I know how to develop a lane. So going back to those pairs, it felt like I had an advantage. Finally, it's been a while.
Right.
So it just was a perfect storm, and everything just seemed to fall into place.
Yeah, we were watching the top 12 quite a bit. And man, it was like that top 5 kept fluctuating, with the exception of like Doherty. Doherty was pretty much in it the whole time, but you had guys falling out, going in, falling out, going in throughout the whole thing. And the scores looked pretty low compared to like qualifying, even the captures round. Right? Did they change a little bit throughout there, or were they just?
I think the big reason that there was so much fluctuation in the guys and just back and forth was the bonus pins, because the scores being that low. If you bowl one big game, and you fly up there, it was easy because everyone was within reach. But you can turn right back around and bowl 170 and blink an eye.
Right.
So you got 12 guys doing it, and then on the right, I noticed quite a few of them were tried to throw urethane, and it was on specific pairs. So then I would imagine the pair got a little weird on the right. So with the bonus pins, and then the guys trying to throw urethane, and then certain pairs. I mean, 17 and 18 again. I bowled Doherty on it. He bowled 270 at me on that pair, but like the match before us, 174 to 174, and I know there was a 180 that won on that pair as well. So everyone had to hit those pairs eventually. So like they would hit the good pair, they bowl 230, then they hit a bad pair like that one, and they bowl 170, and it just kept everyone really close.
Right.
And it just came down to having to win matches and ultimately winning the last match. And if I don't beat BJ, he's on the show instead of me.
Right. So equipment wise, what did you use last week? What did you have going on?
So equipment wise, I came in with about 8 Brunswick brand balls, and EBI sent me a bunch of stuff. So I had 20 balls probably from EBI as well. We looked at quite a few different options, and I did try that outside line in practice, but in my gut, I believed that I was going to end up in the track, because in that building, I always find myself ending up in the track throwing something clean and weak. No matter what we bowl, it always seems to be the case. So I spent a lot of my practice session looking through balls, trying to figure out how I could play there as well. And we went through 6 or 8 balls in there. The Futura looked pretty good in, and I actually ended up using it out as well in match play. The Zing from Radical is what we ended up using for the majority of the tournament. We had one, but we actually drilled one with a closer pin to pack. It was 2 3/4. That's the one we ended up using, crushed that with surface. And that was really the ball. That was the main ball. I dabbled with like a Vapor Zone style a little bit in qualifying when I did end up having to jump into the track. And it definitely bailed me out. So I'm really glad that we did that in practice and looked for that, because going in there blind would have been too risky. So that definitely was a big save. So Vapor Zone solid, the Zing from Radical, Ebonite Futura, Turmoil 2 solid from Deviate as well a little bit, and honestly that was about it.
Yeah, so I know the audience would love to hear your opinion of like how you went through your process choosing what balls that you wanted to put in your bag. Since you went through being a free agent,
Right.
There's so many good bowling balls out there from so many different companies. It's really hard to narrow down and figure out, okay, these are the 8 or 12 or however many balls you want to use. How do you go through the process to figure it out?
So this was completely different than anything I'm used to. It's been a long time since I've been a free agent, and back when I was a free agent, before I ever signed a contract, you would take what they give you. I mean, you were desperate for a free ball or anything. There was a lot of times we were still spending full prices on balls, and so being out, spending $1,500 a week and another $200 or $400 on balls that you don't know are even going to be worth a damn. It got expensive, so you had to be careful. So this was a whole different animal. Getting EBI to take care of me like that, sending me all those balls, Chuck taking care of me, and just punching up 8 real quick the day after, basically announcing my free agency. What I did was I actually went online and researched and wrote down all of the numbers of all of the balls, all of the cover stocks, and gave myself the best knowledge that I could about each ball. So I knew how big the cores were and what the covers were, so that I knew, all right, if Sims look good opposed to A-Sims. So I had made sure I wrote down every ball, all the intermediate diffs, all of the diffs, and
for those that don't know, he's saying symmetrical and asymmetrical, so the difference in the 2 cores. If you want to know the difference in that, there's another video you can go and see to be able to explain that a little bit more. And then the differentials and the RGs. The differential basically tells you how much your ball flares, or the flare potential of the ball, and the RG is going to tell you, basically the size of the core and how early that core is meant to and designed to get into a roll. So I just want to clarify that before.
So yeah, we ended up using pretty big cores, and it seemed like besides the future, everything was all solid. Everything. So the covers were pretty big, the cores were pretty big, and having that list was really my only way of knowing what my options even were. So once I had an idea of what the game plan was, I could look at that sheet and say, okay, so what balls are close to, say, like the Zing looked good and Futura looked good in practice. What other balls do I have on this list that the numbers are relatively close that might complement that? And so that's kind of how I picked my arsenal. Fortunately, I only needed to use like 2 other balls.
Right.
But, I mean, that was what I had to do. And I mean, besides that, I would have been clueless. Kind of like a deer in headlights. I mean, there's balls. There may have been 3 or 4 more balls in the truck that probably would have worked that didn't even see the lane because how do you know?
Right.
I mean, at some point you're guessing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you were throwing an awful lot of Motive stuff, obviously, with being on staff with them for, what was it, 2 years?
2 years.
2 years on staff with Motive. So what's the biggest difference? Now you've thrown some of the newer Brunswick stuff and some of the newer EBI stuff. What do you notice different between the 3 brands?
For me, I don't know what it is about my game that really was the reason I could not find a way to get these balls to strike. Obviously, the balls strike. EJ proves it all the time. The problem for me might be my ball speed. It could be my lack of tilt. I couldn't match up with the balls well enough to beat the best in the world. And it's a whole different ball game out there when a hit a game is enough to be making profit or losing $1,500 or $2,000 for the week. I mean, it's a big difference, and it's such a small number. Just one hit, just one messenger 7 or light shaker 10 that falls later, or one stone 9 that should have obviously struck. And to me, whatever the reason was, when I could get to the 1-2, I just couldn't quite strike enough. So for me, it just feels like the EBI and the Brunswick stuff for me, when I could get it there, I got those off hits a little bit more often. I mean, just one tournament back and it showed. I mean, the scores are low and I didn't strike a whole lot, but no one really did. But at the same time, when they're that hard, the off hits are the difference makers, because no one's just splitting the 8-9 when they're that hard 7-8 times a game. It's not happening, right? So it's who can play the pocket, who can make the pocket the biggest, and who can get away with a trip 6 or a messenger or a shaker 10 or something like that. And for me, when I'm playing shallow angles, the light shakers are huge and the messenger 7s are huge. And those are 2 hits that I rely on, and I make my money on those hits. And if just one of those isn't connecting for whatever the reason, a game, I go from making checks and making match plays to being irrelevant, more or less. Right. So that one hit, I just feel like it just was the lack of matching up to the brand for me, and it just didn't work out.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of the amateur bowlers or the people who don't really study the game an awful lot, I think they don't quite understand the difference between matching up and not matching up, and how important even just 6 inches on the lane can make. You know, and you probably testify to this, but all brands have their trick they like to see, or their thing they like to see.
100%.
So that's why you can kind of classify each brand and say, okay, this company likes to see this company does this company does that. You know, and they're all a little bit different. So if, for example, Motive is just a pinch too early and then kind of not enough down lane, that can cause problems for certain people who have certain types of games, where it can also help certain people who have certain types of games.
So right when I signed with Motive is when the patterns started to change, and the combination of the two was
hold on, we can't talk about patterns. We can't talk. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I had to get that in there.
No, for real though, the patterns and what I think he's trying to do with the patterns is make lefties shape the ball. Play right, make it go left, and figure out a way to do something other than play straight. Because a lot of people think lefties just play straight. A lot of guys want to see lefties do more than that. I want to do more than that. You know I can do more than that. I beat him for a title doing more.
Why we gotta bring up old news, man? We gotta bring up old news.
So the motive ball's being known for being a little earlier, and on our side of the lane, having to create shape down lane and fighting the front of the lane because of the way the righties break them down. And as soon as game 3, 4, 5 hit, the fronts get so beat up that it's either a loft game or throw it harder to get it through it or ball down. And then it's a question of, is it even going to go through the pins if I get it there because it's chewing up too early? Or if I ball down so far, am I even going to get the ball to be able to slow down at all? So it's just this constant battle. And for me, with my lack of tilt, with too much ball speed, I just couldn't find a way to get my ball to slow down in the right part of the lane to go through the pins the right way. So even when I could get to the 1-2, I just couldn't get it to strike. That's really what it came down to.
And we saw that today in practice too, because we took that choice, which was pretty lazy, real. I like to say it craps on itself down lane. You know, it gets real lazy off the spot. And we're like, what if we could get it just a little bit sooner? So we took it, we hit it a little bit, and you threw those first couple of shots, and you dang near missed the head pin right. Like, I mean, it made that big of a difference, and then you open your angles up a little bit, and it basically went right back to what it was doing before. So now it's just creating that same thing.
It literally did the same thing as zone further in.
Yeah.
Which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
No. And
theoretically, that's not what you meant.
But that's the point, though. If
exactly.
So that ball obviously just doesn't work. That doesn't match up at that time. So you can't sit there and beat your head against the wall trying to use that type of a shape over and over again. And as much as people like to say, well, you're a professional, you should be able to just change your hand and do this and that. Yeah, that's true to an extent. But the way they say it, it's true to this day, you can't out-bowl bad ball reaction. You can't do it.
Not against the best in the world, especially. No. These guys are the best in the world for a reason. And if you're fighting anything on the lane and someone else who is at the elite level isn't, they're going to beat you. That's just the way it is. So patience week to week is so crucial. And for 2 years, I just kept waiting to see what I needed to see to be on top, and it just never happened.
Right.
So it was time for a change. It was time for us to part ways, and it's just, I mean, no hard feelings to them. I love the family. I love everybody over there, and I wish them all the best. But it just, I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have made the brand more popular on the left side of the lane, like EJ does, and it just didn't work out.
I mean, it is what it is. Business is business, and you've got to do what's best for you and your family. You know, so for sure. But one question I do have: do you believe in new ball carry?
To an extent, yeah.
I mean, I certainly feel like a new bowling ball absolutely hits harder and reads the lane a whole lot better.
I definitely believe they read the lane better, for sure. Those first 3 to even 10 games on a ball are so much different than the rest of the ball's life, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it did cross my mind last weekend, and I wondered to myself, you know, having all these brand new covers, is that really what's making this difference? And
it ain't hurting.
It sure ain't hurting. It wasn't hurting. My carry was really, really good. Yeah, I played shallow angles, and that helps. And my ball, I was seeing it right, but man, when they're that hard, if you're hitting the 1-2 8 times a game and you're striking 7 of those times, that's hard to beat.
Mm-hmm. Very hard to beat. So my advice to anybody out there, and I'm sure you would agree with this, if you're sitting on a bowling ball that you've had for even more than a year or 2 years or even 3 years or older, and you continue to use this old ball, you're giving away pins. You need to go get yourself something newer. get a fresh bowling ball. I don't care what brand you get something in your hands that is newer. The technology changes, the covers change, they hit harder, they go through the pins just completely different than a lot of the older stuff does. So make sure you head over to BowlerX.com. Do you have a discount code of your own?
I have not given me one.
Okay, so you can go ahead.
I was relevant until 2 weeks ago, so
we'll get you your own. That's fine.
Maybe I get my own now.
Yeah. I'll make a phone call. I might be able to get you one. But if for now, use JRX, get yourself a discount at BowlerX.com, and you'll be able to get everything you need for those new bowling balls. Last question, accessory-wise, I want to talk about some of the things that help you in your game when it comes to accessories. Do you use anything crucial?
Yeah. I use the Black Roll turbo tape on my fingers. When I first came out on tour, that's all I used to do, is just cut up the creases of my fingers. And if I got deep into tournaments, the pain in my fingers affected my shot making. And they were bloody, and I mean, it's not a matter of being a tough guy and just dealing with it at that point. When it starts affecting your shot making, you got to do something about it. So I used the tape to cover the creases of my fingers. I went up a full grip size in each finger, and I mean, you can see it.
Yeah.
What do you see?
Yeah.
I mean, just I have no issues at all. I use the patch tape on my thumb. Just it lets me bowl probably triple the amount of games without getting raw like I used to. So the combination of the two, and then I use Genesis on my wrist, helps for support and just preventative maintenance, more or less, for maybe having a little bit of a weaker wrist. I know my forearm's really big, but my wrist isn't as strong as you might think. So, yeah, I mean, that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really use a whole lot other than like switch grips and stuff like that. But there's so much stuff on the market now that's meant to help bowlers, in just so many different ways. When you use the patch tape on your thumb, have you played around with different textures and stuff on the backs there?
Yeah, I actually like more texture on them.
More texture?
Yeah.
Do you use it for protection or to take up space or to try to create a different feel?
I use it for protection, but when I was using the slicker ones, for me, I felt like I needed to squeeze to hang on more. Right. So with the I don't know, more abrasive fabric, I don't feel like I'm doing this to hang on to the ball. Yeah. I do enough of that. Yeah, right. So I don't need.
We all do.
I don't need any extra.
Yeah. The way they make that stuff is they mesh it. So the thicker stuff is more abrasive. You're talking about it's like weaves. The weaves are just thicker.
Gotcha.
And as they get smaller, it becomes smoother, silkier.
That makes sense.
So and as long as people are putting it on properly, they'll be good to go.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, make sure to head over to BowlerX.com. Get everything you need. Use discount code JRX. And Ryan, I appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. We're going to actually follow Ryan a little bit. He's bowling C-squat this week. I'm going to follow him around with the camera, do a little kind of in-between games. Hopefully he's okay with talking to the camera a little bit in between games like we did with EJ. And then hopefully we'll get that up and for you guys to see here a little bit later. So until next time, guys, my name is JR with BowlerX. Thank you again, Ryan Ciminelli, champion last week. What is that, 8 titles now?
That's it. Yeah.
So 2 more, and he is Hall of Fame eligible. So he's on the chase. We're going there.
Take care, guys. Thank you.